Welcome to the Real Talk Show. I am your host, Linda Monde. As we continue our great journey to RAHi 2024, we still acknowledge that June is the month of it's the Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. With me on the show today, we've got Joseph from AHF Zambia and 𝗥𝗲𝗴, a youth representative from the youth platform. Not forgetting our great sign language interpreter, 𝗵𝗃𝗶. Welcome to the show, guys. On today's episode, we will address stigma surrounding mental health, around how it's hard for men to seek for mental health issues, and explore ways to promote mental well-being among adolescents and young men. So before we dive deep into the conversation, Joseph, can you please tell us about your role and responsibilities at your organization and how you would describe your work and area of focus?
All right. Good afternoon, Linda. Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are.
All right, great. Good afternoon, audience. My name is Joseph 𝗿𝗶𝘂, and I coordinate the adolescent health aspect of AHF Zambia. As such, I'm more or less a cardinal or a passage individual in terms of medical prevention and advocacy aspects of AHF Zambia regarding youths in our facilities. Over to you, Linda.
All right, that's great. While we're still on that, in your experience, what factors do you think are the most factors contributing to mental health challenges faced by young people, particularly the men?
For me, I think it really pretty much dwells on societal norms. I think as a society in Zambia, we've had this mentality of assuming a male child or boys or men in general should be strong in nature, and they are not affected the same way females are equally affected with life's challenges and tribulations. So as such, I think if we really dive into the societal norm aspect of things and change the way society treats males, I think we'll have a situation where mental health in males is actually seen in a way that males are equally people. They feel, they go through issues, both good and bad, and just like our women counterparts or females in general, they too have mental stress at the end of the day. So once we sort out the societal norm aspect of mental health and the way it's perceived in young people, males to be specific, then when we deal with that aspect, I think we'll start to see positive strides in how mental health is viewed under young people and males in general. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. 𝗥𝗲𝗴, could you tell us what do you think are the most significant risk factors for mental health issues among adolescents and young men, and how best can we mitigate them?
Right. Thank you so much, Linda. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to Joseph. That's a very interesting question because it goes and delves deep right into what we are talking about today. So I hope to speak from both my experience, what I've read, and what I've seen happen around. And one of the things that I'll start with the most obvious one is that a lot of young people, a lot of young men have found themselves abusing drugs, and I think by now we all know the effects of alcohol or drug abuse. So it causes different disorders in young men, different disorders in young women. But correct me if I'm wrong, from my assessment, a majority of people abusing drugs are young men. And that's because I was having this conversation with someone earlier, and I was telling them that we are living in a time when a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs by non-government organizations, by the government, seems to be focusing a little bit more on females. So there's lack of mentorship among young people in terms of if you're going to start using drugs, to what extent should you go, and what reason is going to be what reason are you going to have for drinking that alcohol? Also, the other thing is there's family disorganization. Most of the time you find that, like as Joseph was saying, one of the most common things is that the responsibility to provide or the responsibility to lift people up around them is centered mostly on men, on young men. So there's that pressure that might come from that exact arrangement, and sometimes it's also trauma from things that they've experienced while being young, and they haven't been taught to speak about them freely. So those are some of the things that come out quite significantly. But also, there's just, on the other hand, while I may say that there are things that put pressure on young men, there's also very, very low attention from young men. Like, do they get to pay attention to their mental health? Because we've been taught to not look at it as a very, very important aspect of our lives. So you find them deliberately ignoring, which I think is quite a big problem, and needs to be dealt with as soon as possible.
Okay, so while I was showing that, you've mentioned an aspect that has to do with family and the social norms that men shouldn't really pay attention to mental health. So I'd like you to tell us, what role do you think learning institutions, families, communities play in supporting mental health in the different age groups of adolescents and young men?
Okay, thank you so much, Linda. So like I said, I'll give you an example. There's this common saying that charity begins at home. So what that entails is sort of the beliefs that we hold towards life, the beliefs that we hold towards ourselves as human beings, sort of have a bedrock in what we are taught at home. Our behavior, our mannerism, and also even how we take care of ourselves. And when you look at families and institutions such as higher learning institutions and communities, these are key factors that contribute to the growth of a person. In 𝗵𝗃 we say, in fact, there's this proverb that says that it takes a community to raise a child. So that means that families in themselves, parents have got a responsibility, or even brothers and sisters have got a responsibility to become a little bit more open about this conversation, take a deliberate step, and be intentional about holding conversations as to why it's important for us to keep our mental health in check. What are the small things that we can do to make sure that we are mentally on our toes? And then the same goes for higher learning institutions. I know quite a number of higher learning institutions that have been deliberate enough to have student counselors who are very functional, because it is one thing to have a student counselor, and it's also another thing to have a student counselor that is functional. So I know quite a number of universities that have systems put in place to make sure that there's enough awareness, there's counseling services being offered to young people. And also, I think the students themselves can take up an initiative and come up with societies that are around raising awareness on mental health. The same goes for communities. We have traditional leaders in our communities. We have other leaders such as the clergy. All of those are people that greatly contribute in shaping our beliefs towards society, our beliefs towards ourselves. So they have a responsibility to start these conversations, and of course offer the right information, because it is one thing to start this conversation, but it's also another thing to make sure that the right information is offered to these young people.
All right, that's great to hear. I hope we're learning, the online audience is learning a lot from these, and we're going to start to live in an era where people embrace and prioritize their mental health. Joseph, are there any specific strategies or interventions that that you found or would suggest to be very effective in promoting mental well-being among adolescents and young men?
Yeah, I think there are quite a few. I think I'll add on as to what Iga said. If we look at the way our school setup is now, I think it's now that we are seeing guidance. They call them guidance and counseling rooms. It's a department on its own. It's one thing to have that facility available for young people at schools, but it's another to also have competent people who actually welcome you, so as to make it easy for you to open up as a young person, especially for males. As I mentioned earlier, you see, society has more or less made something in a way where you feel as a man you cannot open up. If you open up, you're soft. And that's why I said it still stems back to societal norms. So as such, even when you look at our school setup and where we have guidance and counseling departments, I think it's up to the people who run those departments to actually create an environment that's open, an environment that's welcoming to young males, and to let them know that this is a safe space for you to actually share what you have to share, and you won't be judged for a start. And even after sharing, we will find a solution towards whatever you're going through. I think even when you look at the statistics, it's sad in Zambia that you'll find most of the suicides that happen actually affect males. There's a reason things are like that. Why is it that people bottle up, especially the young man, the young male? My colleague Iga did state that sometimes as a male, society is tailored in a way that as a man, you have to provide. As a man, equally, you have to succeed. Come rain, come sunshine. So as such, let's open up, not just from the schools. I think even the tertiary schools, I think now colleges and universities too have that department of guidance and counseling. It may be a department on its own. Sometimes it may be attached to a clinic that's attached to that facility. But equally also in the family. I think if it starts from there, how your parents talk to you, how your nephews or siblings or aunties and uncles talk to you, I think that carries weight. So we really have to adapt and move away from that notion to say a young man. In Nyanja, there is a saying that states "Mwamuna samalila," which pretty much just implies as a man you should not cry. Okay, and it starts from there. Let's learn how to talk to people. Let's learn how to welcome people and create an environment that's welcoming for them to express what they're going through. Not where something tragic happens and all of a sudden you're surprised. Why didn't this young man open up to me that he's going through this and this and this? So I think it really starts from there in creating that environment. Then I think if that is done, I think it's a stepping stone in the right direction. Thanks, Linda.
All right, that's great. I think we can throw it now to our online audience. Let's read some comments from the online audience. Nisa says, watching from Kitwe, Mindiolo, I think. Interesting topic, watching from Western Province, from Grace. Rebecca says, following closely. Kathy says, very interesting topic, following. Mukonda says, watching from Mongu, Western Province. Okay, so we have spoken about the various things we think affect men and what really may cause mental health issues. Iga, could you tell us what you think is the primary cause to, in as much as men may face various mental health issues and everything else, what do you think is the reason why men hesitate to seek help and counseling, and how can we address these challenges?
Okay, thank you so much, Linda. So one notable thing about this conversation on mental health in in men is that I think the conversation has been going on for quite a long time. We've been talking about this for a very, very long time, and there has been very, very little action. Just to echo a part of the words that Joseph mentioned earlier, I think that time now is time for action. Now is time for us to be the versions of people that would naturally make someone feel comfortable enough to speak and say how they are feeling. Because, as we mentioned, I'm bringing this point out because one of the biggest things, or one of the strongest things, there are two things actually. So in our heads as men, there's this assumption that, oh, you know what, it's already instilled in my head that I have to behave this certain way, I have to do this, I have to be this strong, I have to do that, and I have to do that. And then on top of that, the behavior that we see around actually confirms that, oh, you know what, I shouldn't have. Because there have been instances where men have sought help, there have been instances where men have opened up, there have been instances where men become transparent about how they were feeling, how they were perceiving their society, their environment. And what came out was, how could you as a man say such a thing? Why as a man are you behaving like that? And this has even, we have heard reports even from our law enforcement agencies. Well, not to turn them down, but like the reality is that while they're doing their best in combating this issue, there's also a component of them that have been actually perpetrating and making such statements. So the thing about words is you could make it as a joke, you could say it, and it might sound simple to you, but you never know the weight that it is carrying on the other person's end. So I think that is one of the biggest things. There's this, it's planted in our heads, and then the behavior that we see around actually confirms what we already believe. So now it's time for action. Now it's time for us to be people that could actually help someone open up and see an environment that they can speak about things that matter to them inside.
All right, great. To our dear men out there, as we discuss mental health, it's essential for you to also realize that there's importance in you prioritizing your mental health despite of what society says or the surrounding you're at, because there are a lot of dangers in you not seeking help when you're experiencing some sort of when your mental health is not so well. Some of the risks that you could experience while not seeking mental health and probably doing that Mamuna Samadila thing, it would affect you because it would increase your suicidal thoughts, it could worsen your mental health conditions, it could strain your relationships around, it can decline your physical health, your productivity levels would decrease, and also you would just lose your social touch and socially isolate. So it's very important that as men you learn to prioritize your mental health despite of anything that you may be facing, despite of what society says, because at the end of the day, when you are mentally healthy, you are a more productive person in society. And men are very dear to society. Like we said earlier on, men are providers, so you're very dear to society. So your mental health should be key because we need you to be high and mighty on that high horse, mentally stable. So as we dive into the conversation, we have talked about various things. So now I would like, if Joseph, if you could tell us how can we break the stigma surrounding mental health for men and encourage them to have open discussions, and also encourage them just to start practicing the seeking help kind of behavior?
All right, great, Linda. I think for stigma is not something that can be tackled, I think, just from quite a community point of view. I think stigma first starts with oneself. If you are not aware, you can stigmatize yourself in a way that you're not getting external stigma per se, but internal stigma. You feel you're not valuable enough to actually share what you're going through. You feel that, you know what, if I open up, I'm just wasting this individual's time. My concerns or pressure or stress is not worth anybody's time. And I think it starts from there. If men start to know that they are valuable, you did state earlier on that we need men the same way we need women. I think the mental health regarding females, young women, I think has really been carried on by a lot of stakeholders. But now is the time for, like my colleague Giga said, I think we've done a lot of the talking. I think they say numbers don't lie. Statistics are there to prove that this is one area that really needs concerted efforts. And as such, I think from stigma, I think it should start from an independent point of view. As a young man, know that you are valuable, you are needed, you are required to be here. And as such, whatever you're going through can be worked on. I think there's no challenge in this world that doesn't really have an answer. One way or the other, I think sharing actually reduces that burden of pressure on yourself. So once we alienate that instance of self-stigmatization, I think that's when now it can be spread on to other young men that they indeed are valuable and their mental health matters. Thank you.
All right, great. We have comments in the comment section. Grace says, I'm really interested in the part where the government pays much attention to a girl child neglecting the boy children. This has become a serious issue through the girl child empowerment starting to dominate. In the near future, we will see women marrying men and not saying empowerment for women is not a good thing, but it should be equal. It will also help in handling health issues in men. Namuyala says there is need to create and promote support groups where men can share their experiences in a safe and non-judgmental environment. Kathy says, I feel the reason why men don't open up is the fear of judgment. Men may fear being judged as weak or vulnerable if they share their feelings or their struggles. Fear of losing control. Men may feel that opening up about their struggles means losing control or admitting defeat. Rebecca says, stigma begins with oneself, because for a man to open up, he will first think about what the other man will think of him. So reducing stigma starts with the man himself, because once a man tells himself to say, I will stand on opening up regardless of what society will think. Okay, great. Our online audience today is very active. Those are some very interesting insights and opinions. So Ika, could you tell us how we can incorporate mental health check-ins into our day-to-day routine, and similar to how people have physical checkups? So how can people incorporate mental health check-ins into their day-to-day lives?
Okay, thank you so much, Linda. I'll start by making a comment on one of the comments that came through from our online audience, and they were talking about reducing, dealing with these issues starting from men themselves, and I totally agree with that. My colleague Joseph spoke of value, and then I also want to add another word, which is identity. A lot of young men are facing an identity crisis, and they solidly don't even know who they are. So what ends up happening is that when they're in an environment and they do something, and then they are told they are weak, they actually tend to believe that because they haven't found a solid identity of who they are. Listen to me. If I know as a man, I know I'm strong, I know what I'm capable of doing, I will know that not even opening up can turn me into a weak man, because that's only a phase of life. If I'm solid in who I am, not even my environment will make me believe something else. So value and identity will always be such a big role, will play such a big role in combating the stigma that is going on around men's mental health. But getting back to your question, I think self-awareness is also a very important thing. Men find themselves being so busy that they don't get to be in touch with their reality and what's happening around them. So it's always important. The number one thing that men can do is that finding time to just sit down and reflect, thinking about maybe why they might have reacted some type of way to a specific comment that was made or a specific statement that was to them. It's such things that will help us be able to understand what we could do about certain things. We'll be able to say, normal me wouldn't behave like that. So we need to be self-aware and take deliberate steps towards always knowing what is going on with us. And then the other thing is we could get accountability partners around us and just let them observe us, tell them to say, okay, you know what, my weakness is this and this and this and this, and sometimes when I'm triggered I behave this way. So if you have an accountability partner, they'll be able to tell you every now and then when you seem to be relapsing. They'll be able to say, you know what, I think something is wrong right in this moment and you might need help in this way and this way. The same way we have people taking care of us when we are physically sick, we could also have some people taking care of us when we are mentally sick. I think those are the two things that I can point out. I hope that my colleague Joseph can also add something to that. Thank you.
Joseph, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think for me, just a small detail to add. I think for young men listening right now, I think you are who you surround yourself with. Let's just start there. Have groupings or have friends who build you. I think not just from yourself, but if people speak well amongst your grouping, you equally feel you need your issues won't be brought down there and then. Okay, I think you should have or identify not the world, but even just one person you're able to trust and talk to, both in good and bad times. Those are the check-ins we need. If you can do that vis-a-vis with yourself and that friend, you will start to notice that most of that burden you're carrying on your head is actually light now in the way you handle it. So just find one person. It can be two people, it can be a bunch of friends, but just have one individual you can actually talk to, you trust, to share both good and bad information. But it starts from there that you actually handle how you have these check-ins on how each one of you is doing, and your mental health is actually something that will be put in the forefront with regard to your friendships.
Thank you so much for that. While I still have you, like I mentioned earlier on at the start of the show, June is the month of men's mental health awareness. So could you tell us what this month means to you? And with regards to addressing the stigma around mental health seeking issues, so what do you have to say in this month of mental health awareness? What does the month mean to you? And with regards to men, the stigma that goes around with men seeking mental health issues, what do you have to say? Like, what are your final remarks on this?
All right. So my final remarks regarding mental health, seeing that June is the month for mental health. I think for men, young men, this is a time for you to come out of your shell. Mostly, I think my colleague Iga stated earlier when the show started, there's an identity crisis also when it comes to men. Often we are laid back, and I'm speaking for not just really young men, but even the older generation. I think this issue of being laid back, I think now is the time to come out and let your voice be heard. you can go all out on full frontal. I think I've seen organizations now which actually have an HR situation where each individual is called every now and then, just to check up on you. I think it's time that as men we adopt the principle of expressing what we feel, how we feel. It doesn't mean if you want to express yourself, 𝗫𝗫, then you're going through bad times in life. But even the good parts, I think it starts from there. Have a voice for yourself, learn to express yourself, and go full frontal that I equally have a voice to voice out. So I think that's what I would submit towards the month of June being Mental Health Month.
Okay, great. 𝗤𝗲, could you tell us what this month means to you and your final remarks on the show?
Right, thank you so much, Linda. Allow me to begin by commending the youth platform for dedicating this particular show to men's mental health. It shows that as an organization, we are embracing the idea of ensuring that all aspects of people's health are catered for. So allow me to begin by appreciating the TYP for also making sure that such topics are not left out even during our Indabas. Our Indaba should be coming up very soon. I'm very confident that this is one of the things that we will be discussing, and it comes at such a nice time when we are celebrating men's mental health. My remarks, I think so much has been said. I'll just go back to the two words that I spoke about. Now is the time for us to go on a self-identification journey. Now is the time for us to start understanding what our value is. Yeah, just be the person that another man would be comfortable to confide in. Other than that, so far it's impressive that we're having enough conversations, but I will repeat what I said earlier. Now is the time for action.
All right, that's great. I'm really glad I had to host men on this show because it had to come from their fellow men for them to really get it. Because if we had females talking about it, it was going to look some type of way. It was great hosting you guys on this show today. Thank you for the great insight. It was a great conversation. Thank you. So to our online audience, catch us next time, same place. Thank you so much.